was growing up in Colombia, it wasn't unusual to eat beans and to find rocks in them. People with recent dental work would have to avoid popcorn, jawbreakers, and apparently beans. I remember my dad eating a red bean soup in the kitchen of the last apartment we lived together before my parents divorced. I especially loved the kitchen because it had two entrances and it was large enough for my sister and me to play tag in it. As he was eating the soup, he actually came to a point and he stopped and he reached into his mouth and pulled a rock and he placed it calmly on the table, but he was frustrated. It didn't take much to frustrate in those days. And he kept going. He came to another stop and he pulled a rock out of his mouth, and this time he wasn't so calm, he was angry, and he just chucked it across the kitchen. And it took him about 2 to 3 seconds to realize he had not chopped a rock, but a molar. It's been more than 3 decades since my parents divorced, and they still do not like each other. Here are two people that love each other so much. My dad, guitar in hand, serenaded my mom at her windowsill. My mom went against everything her family wanted for her, eloped, and ran away to Florida where they started a family before returning to Colombia. But they cannot even say one nice thing about each other. I think I've heard my dad said twice in his life, you know, your mom did a good job raising you too. And my mom in turn would say, you know, to give your dad credit, he can turn the ugliest piece of lumber into the most beautiful piece of furniture. Which is not really a compliment. Like a mention of a hobby. Something you do after you get inspired by a Pinterest board. You know, to your dad's credit, he can turn ingredients into a smoothie. Or to your dad's credit, he can make strawberry jam. Out of all the things that kids need to grow up, furniture doesn't even make it into the top 100. I do remember one piece of furniture that he designed. It was a wall desk, and he had made it into my room at the first apartment my mom rented after they divorced. It must have been night because I remember the lights being on. And my dad was home because he came a couple of evenings a week to help my sister and me with homework. I was doing my calligraphy lines, which were part of my mandatory Catholic upbringing. And I was pressing hard on every stroke, making my number 2 pencil look like a Sharpie. My dad softly grabbed my hand and told me, you know, it's okay to cry if you need to cry. And I didn't need to cry. I was just angry. I was angry that the two people in the world that I loved the most could not work it out. But I did. I did cry. I cried uncontrollably for a few minutes. And my dad saw that behind the anger was sadness. And in that moment, he taught me that men don't have to put on a face when they're faced with strong emotions, that they can just be sensitive and deal with them. Years later, my dad was in the last apartment that we rented in Colombia. He was sitting in yet another piece that he had designed. It was a throne chair that came with us wherever we moved. The chair was made out of mahogany. The arm stumps had pharaoh faces carved into them, and the legs had elephant hooves carved into them where the floor met the footing. It was highlighted with gold lacquer, which contrasted the dark stain on it and the mint green upholstery. We had just told my dad that my sister and I had made the tough decision to leave everything we knew behind and try our luck in San Diego. He had been trying to find a home to call his own, moved around the country, before finally making it to Barranquilla to be around my sister and I. He told me with tears in his eyes, never look back. That was my mistake. When I boarded the plane to leave Colombia, I sat by the window and I looked out of it so people wouldn't see me crying for 2 hours. And I wasn't only crying because I was going to have a layover in Phoenix, which has been historically for me the worst airport to fly into, because TSA in Phoenix acts like they've never seen a brown man before. I was crying because my dad taught me, even through with a man with his temper, that could have gone to teach me about the toxic machismo that was so popular in Colombia. He taught me to be okay with feeling sad, with crying, when I feel lost, when I feel disoriented. If he would have followed his own advice, maybe we would have grown closer to him. Maybe he would have even had a full set of teeth.